some homeless guy who scraped his last $20 together because he was desperately searching for his purpose in life? No. This book was bought by people like you and me, people who were searching to pad their children's education account, people who were looking to make sure that their retirement savings were secure, people who were trying to move up the corporate ladder, and people who had their life moving in a positive direction. But at night, these same people would look up at their ceilings, unable to sleep, and go, why am I doing all this stuff? What is all of this for? Is this all there is? 20 years from now, am I still going to be doing the same thing? And why? I mean, everything's going good, and I know how to keep it going good, but is there a reason, and do I have a purpose? These are the people who bought this book. Otherwise, it's not on the bestseller list for 90 weeks and selling 30 million copies. Because you see, the cry of the human heart and the human soul, at some point when your heart and soul is quiet enough, or you're lonely enough, there's something in you that goes, why? Is there more? And there's something in our lives that wants to have a purpose. And the great news is God says it does. Your life does have a purpose. And you can know what it is. If you brought your Bibles, turn to Psalm 33. If you didn't bring your Bibles, it's okay. I'm going to have it right up here on the screen for you. I'm going to give you the big truth on how to renovate your mind in two parts today. The first part of that truth that helps us understand our purpose in life is simply this. God is up to something in this world. God is up to something in this world. And in order to understand your purpose, then at some point in time in your life, you're going to have to come to the conclusion that God is up to something in this world. Say it with me, whether you believe it or not. It's okay to lie in church. No, it's not okay to lie in church, but say it with me. Okay? God is up to something in this world. Now, Psalm 33, verse 8 is where I'm going to start reading this morning. This is King David, the most powerful man King David has ever met is King David. Okay? He's the king of Israel, and he says this in verse 8. Let all the earth fear the Lord. Then he defines what he means by fear. Let all the earth fear the Lord. What do you mean, David? I mean, let all the people of the world revere him. And basically, David is saying, no matter what you believe about God, everybody should stop once in a while just to show some respect for God. Just in case, no matter what you believe about God, everybody should stop once in a while to show God's respect. Now, why should we do that? He goes on to say why. He goes on to say, because God spoke and it, that's the world, came to be. God spoke and the world came to be. He commanded and it, that's the world, stood firm. In other words, every once in a while, regardless of your lifestyle, regardless of what you believe about God, everybody ought to stop once in a while and go, whoa. Because if it weren't for God, I wouldn't be. No matter what you think about God, if you think God had anything to do with starting the world, if you think God pushed the first domino, if you think God caused the Big Bang, if you think He went out and put the cows all exactly where they are, or whatever you think about how creation happened, if you think God had anything to do with creation, David is saying once in a while, everybody needs to stop and go, whoa. If it wasn't for God, there wouldn't be a me. And that pause, that moment should motivate us, David says, to ask, if there's a God in all of this, then why? And if I'm here and God caused something, anything to happen to get me here, why? And we question why, that leads us to this issue of purpose. What was the purpose for which God created all this world? And for which He created me? Was He bored? Did he lose a bet? Did he flip a coin? Was he lonely? Did he run out of things to do? Was this an experiment? I mean, why? I know I'm here, and I know something doesn't come from nothing. God had to do something to get this started. So what? Why? What is the purpose in all of this? And suddenly we're forced down the road to say, if God created it, as David says, if all of a sudden we're faced with the fact that if it wasn't for him, there wouldn't be an us, then no wonder our heart and our soul says in those quiet moments, why am I here? And is there even an answer to that question? Is there a purpose that's somehow connected to God? And David goes on, look at what he says here in the next verse, in verse 10. Okay? The Lord foils the plans of the nations. And then he explains what he's saying. The Lord foils the plans of the nations. He thwarts the purposes of the peoples. And basically David is saying, everyone's plans have the potential of falling apart, of being canceled by God. And we have all experienced this in one form or another. Some of us have taken a vacation to Hawaii for a week. And it's raining every single day. Some of us have had a soccer tournament for our all-star soccer daughter. And the day before the tournament, she breaks her leg. And David is kind of getting into it here. He's talking about thwarted plans. And all David is saying is that God has the power to foil all of man's plans. Now, this is a king saying this. All David has to do is snap his fingers, and the world changes. If David looks at you a certain way, things happen. And then King David realizes that as powerful as he is, as much leverage as he has over the people in his life, and as much influence he has, he knew that God could still thwart even his greatest of plans. And then he says this. But, stop, contrast, but the plans of the Lord are different. They're different than man's plans. They stand forever. God has plans that no one can stop. The purposes of his heart through how many generations? All generations. What David understood because he knew his history, and what he understood because he knew the promises of God, was that God has a multi-generational plan. A multi-generational plan that no person would be able to slow down or stop or alter, and he realized that he was right in the middle of it. You see, he understood that God had a multi-generational plan that began before his time, went on during his time, and would go on after his time. So you see that God is up to something in the world. And the second part that David understood as part of this multi-generational plan was that he had been invited to play a part, that you and I have been invited to play a part. You see, God is up to something in this world, and you are invited to be a part of it, and you are invited to be a part of it, and you are invited to be a part of it, and I am invited to be a part of it. We really do have a purpose. There really is a plan and a purpose for our lives. But all those plans fit into the overall plan of God, and that's what makes this so amazing. Now, from David's perspective, this was pretty easy to see because, he went back a little ways and he knew the story of Abraham. And a long time ago, God spoke to a man named Abraham and said, Abraham, I'm picking you. I want you to play a part in my plan. I'm going to make you a great nation because I'm going to send my son, the Messiah, into this world through your lineage to pay for the sins of this world. And I'm going to start the whole thing off with you, Abraham. Then Abraham had a son who had a son who had many different sons, and God made those sons into a nation. And then one day God picks a guy named Moses, and he tells Moses to lead the nation to a place where God would establish a kingdom. And if you lived during Abraham's days, you would have wanted to be a member of Abraham's family. And if you lived during the days of Moses, you would have wanted to be a member of Moses' family, because God was all about what he was doing. And he was up to something in those families. And then God eventually took that nation of Israel, put them in the promised land of Israel, and established his kingdom. And David became the king. And he looked back and he would have said, whoa, God was up to something. I can see it in the past. I can see it where I am. I can see where it's going. It's multi-generational, and I happen to